The poem Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas is one of the most powerful and emotionally charged works of 20th century literature. Written in 1947 as Thomas's father was dying, the poem expresses a son's impassioned plea for his father to fight against death. It captures the tension between the natural inevitability of death and the human desire to resist it. The repeated refrain, "Do not go gentle into that good night," serves as a call to arms, urging people to resist the fading of life with all the vigor and strength they can muster. The poem's primary message is clear. Life is precious, and even in the face of death, one should fight to the very end, refusing to surrender quietly. The poem is structured as a villanelle, a highly structured 19-line form that uses repetition to great effect. Thomas repeats the lines, "Do not go gentle into that good night," and rage against the dying of the light throughout the poem, creating a sense of urgency and intensity. The form itself contributes to the poem's theme of resistance and defiance. The repetitive structure, with its cyclical return to the key refrains, mirrors the way life circles back on itself, the constant tension between life and death, between acceptance and resistance. The repetition also imbues the poem with a musical quality, making it both mournful and forceful at the same time. It is a poetic form that serves as the perfect vehicle for Thomas's emotional appeal, driving home the message that even in the face of inevitable death, we should not go quietly. The opening lines, "Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage against the dying of the light," set the tone for the entire poem. Thomas's use of gentle and good night as metaphors for death softens the idea of dying as something peaceful or serene. However, this is immediately countered by the exhortation to burn and rave, as if to say that the approach of death should not be met with quiet acceptance but with a fierce resistance. The word rage is especially significant, connoting intense, passionate anger and rebellion. By urging his father, and by extension all people, to rage against the end of life, Thomas rejects the notion that death is something to be passively accepted. The first type of person Thomas addresses in the poem is the wise man, who knows that dark is right, meaning that death is natural and inevitable. Despite this knowledge, the wise man does not go gentle into that good night, because his words had forked no lightning. In other words, even those who have lived a thoughtful, intelligent life, who have accumulated wisdom over the years, feel the frustration of not having achieved everything they wanted to. The image of lightning suggests a sudden, brilliant impact, a force that leaves a mark on the world. The wise men, even at the end of their lives, recognize that their words and deeds have not had the full effect they might have hoped for. This realization propels them to resist the dying of the light. They do not want to leave the world without making a significant impact, without achieving the kind of illumination that forks or splits the darkness. Next, Thomas turns to good men, who lament that their frail deeds did not dance as brightly as they could have. These men, who have lived morally upright lives, look back on their actions and wish that they had done more, accomplished more, left a more profound legacy. Their last wave, the final stage of their lives, is marked by this sorrowful reflection on what could have been. Yet even they, despite their awareness of their limitations, do not go gentle into that good night. They too rage against the dying of the light, striving for one final moment of brightness before they fade away. The imagery of the green bay suggests the lushness and vibrancy of life, a stark contrast to the frailty of human deeds, emphasizing the poignancy of their regrets. The wild men in the next stanza are those who caught and sang the sun in flight, a powerful image of those who live their lives with passion and abandon. These men have pursued life with intensity, seizing every moment and reveling in the beauty and energy of the world around them. However, they learned too late they grieved it on its way. This suggests that, in their wild pursuit of life, they may have overlooked or misunderstood the fleeting nature of their experiences. They grieve too late because they only realize the transience of life as it slips away. Nevertheless, even in the face of this late realization, they do not go gentle into that good night. Their wildness, their zest for life, compels them to resist the end with all the energy they have left, raging against the dying of the light. In the next stanza, Thomas speaks of grave men, those who are serious and perhaps reflective, who see with blinding sight. These men, who may have lived more somber, introspective lives, are nonetheless able to perceive a deeper truth as they approach death. The phrase blinding sight is paradoxical, suggesting that as their physical vision dims, they gain a kind of spiritual or emotional clarity. Their blind eyes can still blaze like meteors and be gay. an image that conveys both the intensity of their inner vision and the possibility of joy, even at the end of life. These grave men, like the others, refuse to go quietly into death. Even as their physical faculties fail, their inner fire burns brightly, and they rage against the dying of the light. The final stanza of the poem is the most personal and emotionally charged. Here, Thomas addresses his father, who is on the sad height, a metaphor for the brink of death. This is where the poem's universal themes of death and resistance intersect with a deeply personal plea. Thomas's relationship with his father and his grief over his father's impending death imbues this stanza with a sense of urgency and desperation. He implores his father to curse, "Bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray." This line encapsulates the complexity of Thomas's emotions. He wants his father to fight against death, to resist with all his might, even though he knows that death is inevitable. The phrase curse, bless reflects the duality of the moment. Thomas both dreads and longs for his father's emotional response, understanding that his father's tears are a reflection of his fierce struggle against the inevitable. The repetition of the refrains in this stanza, "Do not go gentle into that good night and rage against the dying of the light," underscores the intensity of Thomas's plea. It is as if he is begging his father not to give up, not to slip away quietly, but to fight with every ounce of strength he has left. In terms of its thematic content, "Do not go gentle into that good night" is a meditation on death, but it is also a celebration of life. The poem does not deny the reality of death. In fact, it acknowledges that death is a natural and inevitable part of life. However, Thomas urges us not to accept death passively. Instead, we should approach it with resistance, with a fierce determination to live fully until the very end. This theme of resistance is at the heart of the poem. Whether we are wise, good, wild, or grave, we all face the same fate. But the way we face it, the way we respond to the approach of death, is what defines us. Thomas's poem suggests that there is nobility in fighting against death, in refusing to go quietly into the night. It is a call to embrace life with passion and vigor, to resist the fading of the light as long as we can. The poem's emotional impact is heightened by its use of vivid, often startling imagery. The metaphors of light and darkness are central to the poem's meaning. Light represents life, vitality, and consciousness, while darkness represents death and oblivion. The dying of the light is a powerful metaphor for the fading of life, and Thomas's repeated exhortation to rage against it suggests that life is something worth fighting for, even in the face of inevitable decline. The images of lightning, meteors, and the sun all reinforce the idea of life as something bright and fleeting, something that blazes briefly before it is extinguished. The poem's language is also deeply physical. Words like burn, rave, blaze, and rage evoke a sense of fiery intensity, of life as a force that resists being snuffed out. Even as the poem acknowledges the inevitability of death, it celebrates the fierce vitality of life. The men in the poem, wise, good, wild, and grave, are all characterized by their passionate engagement with life, even as they approach its end. Their resistance to death is not just a refusal to accept the end of life, but a testament to the power of life itself. The fact that they rage against the dying of the light suggests that life is something precious, something to be held onto with all our might. The personal element of the poem, the fact that it was written in the context of Thomas's father's illness, adds another layer of meaning to the poem. While the poem's themes are universal, its emotional core is deeply personal. Thomas's plea for his father to fight against death reflects his own grief and fear of loss. The poem becomes not just a meditation on death, but a son's desperate appeal for his father to stay alive a little longer. This personal connection gives the poem its emotional intensity, making it not just a philosophical reflection on death, but a heartfelt cry of anguish and love. In conclusion, "Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night" is a powerful and deeply moving poem that explores the themes of death, resistance, and the human desire for life. Through its vivid imagery, emotional intensity, and masterful use of form, the poem captures the tension between the inevitability of death and the human impulse to resist it. It is a celebration of life's vitality, even in the face of its inevitable end, and a call to fight for every moment we have. The poem's repeated refrains, "Do not go gentle into that good night," and rage against the dying of the light, serve as both a lament for those who must face death and a rallying cry for those who still have life left to live. Whether we are wise, good, wild, or grave, Thomas's poem reminds us that life is something to be cherished, and even in the face of death, we should strive to live fully and fiercely until the very end.